All right, welcome to the Church Dropout podcast. My name is Alan. I'm the host. I'm here with my lovely co-host,
Lisa.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Church Dropout is a podcast. We talk about issues, topics, and teachings related to faith, life, and culture in ways that are sometimes funny, sometimes serious, but always insightful. If you have not already, please like, rate, and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast at. And so today I want to talk about something that we kind of addressed before, but hold on. I want to get in character for this one. Yeah, I want to get in character for this one. Is that okay?
Okay, what's the character?
Okay, here we go. Hold on. All right.
Your glasses are crooked.
Okay, I'm ready. All right, so today what I want to talk about is something called selective politicking. You know what selective politicking is?
I don't, but I can't take you serious.
Okay, so let me help you out. Listen, in the street, selective politicking is when you push an issue on one end, but you don't push the issue with someone else. It's a street term.
Okay.
But you can't really understand it without.
I can't?
No, because this is the life that I used to live. So I want to make sure that you understand.
What life? Now you had several lives, because this was never part of this life.
Well, there are certain things, Lisa, that you don't know.
Okay.
I've had to keep some things from you. Really, honestly, just for your safety.
Okay. 25 years. And this is the first time I've heard this.
Well, you got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do.
What are we doing?
The podcast. You don't want me to be in character?
No. Not when the character has nothing to do with anything we're about to talk about.
It does.
It does not.
Okay. So since Lisa doesn't want me to be in character, I won't be in character. But we are going to talk about selective politicking, and it is a street term. Okay. Mm-hmm. And selective politicking, again, is when you push a certain issue or a topic or a situation with one person or one community, one group, but you don't push that same issue with someone else. Whether that's because you like them, maybe there's a personal relationship there, maybe there's benefit there. That's called selective politicking. Okay. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Right?
And I understood it clearly, even without the costume.
Well, it wasn't a costume. It was my life. Okay? So don't call the way I used to live my life.
You better quit lying to these folks.
Okay. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we did a video on MLK and how John MacArthur was saying that he's in hell, right? And we didn't really address whether or not Martin Luther King was a Christian or not, because to me that was just besides the point. Yeah, it was irrelevant to me. It was the tone in which they were willing to talk about that and say that and all of that good stuff. But I also mentioned in that video, to some degree, we didn't go into it, but that, we'll call certain things out about certain individuals, but we won't call certain things out about other individuals. There are individuals within church history that have done some heinous things, some things that are less than Christian, that we still support today. We still read their books. We still consider them to be important people in Christian history. And we still hold them in high regard. Right. And one of those individuals is Martin Luther, not the king, but Martin Luther, who Martin Luther King Jr. was named after, interestingly. But Martin Luther, famous reformer, individual who pinned his 95 thesis on the Catholic Church door and said we need to reform the church. And him and others really pushed the whole Reformation of the church, which pulled us out of Catholicism or the Catholic faith, and which is why Protestantism was born. But he's held in high regard, and and rightfully so to a large degree, because, he was part of, making this change within Protestantism and restoring what biblical gospel is. However, he was deeply flawed. Okay. He said some things, especially about Jews, that was horrendous, horrible, deplorable. Mocked them, called for their death, a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a Christian.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because Christians selective politic. So I want to play something real quick that kind of just shows this. And this is kind of out of the same camp as Johnny Mac. And I just want to play something to kind of show like this is how selective politicking works. And this is why, a lot of people don't have respect for, the Christian church and even me. I think this is one of the things that really bothers me is that we can't call a spade, and that we do end up having the fear of man or sainting certain individuals. And we do it all based upon these arbitrary borders, right? Because he preached the gospel, that means that we forget everything else that he said. But again, the gospel's not just words, right? It's deeds. It matters how we hold our beliefs, not just that we hold our beliefs, right? So anyway, I want to play this and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Questions of what you believe and practice and why. And until that time, from my perspective, I'm not speaking on your behalf, from my perspective, until that time, I'm not going to pronounce him as unsaved.
You just said earlier you have to judge a tree by its fruit.
Right.
And I'm looking at the fruit of his life, the fruit of his ministry, these things which you admit are reprehensible, and then you're telling us you can't judge a tree by its fruit.
Okay, let's talk about different.
So let me just stop it here real quick. So what they're talking about is they're going back and forth about people who are in a specific camp that are teaching heretical or maybe even teaching some false doctrine.
Okay.
And one group is pressing another group on those individuals. That other group is not willing to say whether or not those individuals are Christian or not Christian, because they don't know them or, but they're not willing to go out on a limb and say, hey, these are false teachers. Okay. And they're pressing them for that because they're just saying like, you should be able to see by what they do and how they behave that they're not Christian. And they can't, like, why wouldn't you be able to say this person is preaching a false doctrine? Now, keep that in mind, right?
Okay.
Kinds of fruit. If a man is living in unrepentant sexual immorality, that's pretty bad fruit. If a man is in the depth of his soul believes the falsehood of the prosperity gospel, but he actually believes it and he studied scripture and that's the conclusion he came to, I'm not going to preclude him from the kingdom. I will the other.
What about unrepentant greed, unrepentant covetousness?
And sexual immorality is a part of any man's life too.
Well, see, you're speaking into things that I have no knowledge of, and so I'm not going to speak to that. I can't.
So now there comes a point where, like on the conversation that you and I had, one of the differences that we had was, it seems from our vantage point that this becomes a very easy out for you to simply say, I haven't seen it, I haven't known him, I haven't spent hours with him, I can't know that for sure. Whereas for us, we look at the outward fruit and we say, here's a man who lives this lifestyle. He's doing these lies. There seems to be no active conviction of the Holy Spirit. The things that would grieve your heart doesn't grieve his at all. And yet you're willing to affirm that he's a believer. And these are not things that are going on behind the scenes. These are stuff that happens on his television program every week.
Right. So here, again, here's the thing. There's, to say it once more, I'm not here to defend Benny Hinn, right? I've never, right. Okay, that's number one. But this is for everyone that's watching, right? Number two, to say it for maybe the fourth time, if everything in your description is true, because I've not watched the show or been to meetings, et cetera, maybe one service many years ago at his church. But if that description is true, yeah, we agree, false teacher, right? So let me just turn it around. Would you agree that Martin Luther was a false teacher?
No.
So the man who said that Jews should be forbidden to teach under penalty of death, whose words were used literally by Adolf Hitler in Kristallnacht, the opening of the Holocaust, who said, God commanded me to kill hundreds of thousands or 150,000 peasants, that God commanded me to do that. So a man whose words were used to fuel the fires of anti-Semitic hatred that put millions and millions of Jews to death, who was unhinged in all kinds of rhetoric against all kinds of people. I just mentioned one of his things about getting rid of the insufferable devilish burden of the Jews, who praised the image hanging on a church building in Germany of a pig, where the rabbis are trying to suck in the excrement or nurse from the pig's breast, the pig's nipples, and talking about the Jews. He's not a false teacher. I mean, to me, that's a massive double standard. And I could go on and on. I could add to Luther in ways that would make your description of Benny Hinn seem childishly unimportant compared to the horrific things that Luther said and did that contributed to the slaughter of millions of people. And that's not a false teacher? And
used scatological, obscene language to refer to fellow Protestants, not just the Roman Catholics, but to fellow Protestants. I'm just going to add that as well. I mean, his language
his translators they have to render things in Latin because you can't translate them because of the profanity.
Yeah, and from our perspective, I wouldn't defend any of the horrific things that Martin Luther said in terms of Jews. Some of that stuff is brash, it's offensive. I agree that happened later in Luther's life. And
okay, some of that is brash and offensive. Okay, we're not just talking about somebody saying something mean.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about very sinful, racially saying some horrible things.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says something pretty interesting. He says it was later in his life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, now this is part of the excuse they use with John MacArthur. That John MacArthur's getting old, and he's saying some things, we need to look at his body of work, not just what he says now, but listen to this, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna let it keep going for a little bit.
for Luther, that was not an ethnic disparaging of the Jews so much as it was a theological and doctrinal disparaging of the Jews.
No, it was racial as well. He had racial comments.
The fact that it happened later in life makes it even more reprehensible.
But Luther would have welcomed a repentant Jew into the church if somebody had repented and trusted Christ.
I cannot sit here and allow that to be downplayed like that. The fact that he'll welcome a repentant Jew.
I'm not trying to downplay what
he said. Jews should be forbidden to teach under penalty of death. They should be deprived of livelihood and given the staff to work. They should be herded together in places like ghettos. Their places of business and synagogues should be set on fire. You're telling me he loved Christ and he said those things?
So let's assume he was a racist.
Not just a racist who said that if
brash,
Jews taught
racist.
Judaism, they should be put to death. And an outright attack. This is how Kristallnacht began, November 9th of 1938. Their synagogues and places of business should be burnt down and destroyed. And you're going to pass on that?
Let's assume he was a racist. I'm not passing on any of it.
He said, God commanded me to kill the 150,000. God commanded me to kill them.
Luther said God commanded me to
it's an authentic
kill
part. You read it. You read it. Yes. His words. Okay, his words. So he puts false words in God's mouth. At least then, maybe many other times. I haven't read enough to know that.
Benny Hinn's done it thousands of times.
But Benny Hinn has not led to the slaughter of millions of people with his word. He's not called for violence against other people.
No, he's just exploited poor and sick and
okay, so you're going to damn Benny Hinn to hell and give Martin Luther a pass.
We're not giving him a pass.
But you won't say he's a false teacher?
When it comes to the issues of the central issues of the gospel and the doctrines of faith, which you would affirm, salvation by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone.
So would Benny Hinn.
The doctrine of the Trinity, the doctrine of salvation and the gospel. Luther spent his life promoting that and defending that after 1517, correct? So he did all of that. There's nothing doctrinally. This is what
faith alone, through Christ alone. I get all of that. Then the Trinity, all of these other things. That's adding to it.
Yes.
But do you see the selective politicking here?
I do.
It is not just about, listen, I'm not a Benny Hinn fan because it's not about Benny Hinn.
Right.
My thing is that we're not holding people equally accountable
Yes.
for what we're saying that they're doing, or what you're saying. You're condemning one person or one group based upon their beliefs and what they say and what they do, but you're not willing to hold somebody else in that same tension. That's selective politicking. The same rules that you're applying to this group, you're not willing to apply to this group. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
You know, so you want people to condemn false teachers for this, that, and this, but you're not willing to condemn, you know, Martin Luther for the things that he's done, which are categorically in line with what you're saying somebody else has done. And in some cases, much worse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? That's selective politicking. So I'm just going to let this play out just a little bit longer, and then we'll close up.
Okay.
17, correct? So he did all of that. There's nothing doctrinally. This is why I get back to, well, let's assume that he is a vulgar racist who hated Jews.
And called for their death.
Does that disqualify somebody from the kingdom of God?
Sure.
That does for you.
Sure.
Okay, so if a person preaches the gospel, but they harbor hate in their heart, that doesn't disqualify them from the kingdom. Being right versus doing right.
Right. Yes.
Are you kidding me? That's selective politicking. Because this person's doctrine lined up with everything we say we believe and everything that we feel is orthodox. It doesn't matter how they lived it out. Doesn't matter what they did. We hold this person in high regard. They preached this gospel, this, that, and this. So we overlook all of that. But these guys over here, you see what I'm saying? Like, no, you need to condemn them. You need to do this. Okay, would you condemn this person?
Right.
No. His hate was theological, not based on a doctrine. Not personal. You see what I'm saying? And this is honestly the problem to me.
Yeah.
And Michael Brown points this out. Now, again, my goal with this is not to affirm either side.
Right.
My goal is that there is a selective politicking that's happening within the Christian community.
Yeah.
Where we revere men, where we're not willing to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Because of the stature or our reverence for certain individuals within the community. And this is what James talks about. The book of James, what he says, this is partiality. This is a sin. Listen, I agree. People can make mistakes. I'm not going to judge a person. I'm not going to judge a person's whole life based upon one action.
Right.
What I'm not going to do is judge a person differently because I like that person, or judge a person differently because I respect that person, or judge a person differently because I won't be, I won't be called back to speak at their conference, or I won't be associated with that community any longer, or my theological tribe might put me out if I say something against this particular community. We got to stop this selective politicking in the church. And this is why people have a hard time continuing in the American church. And this has nothing to do with, what spirituality or being a Christian truly is. This is the system of church pushing people into corners, causing confusion. I just think it's horrible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Agree. Yep.
So anyway, I thought it was very interesting.
That was very good, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, you should really go check out the video. I'll try to link it into the show notes. Again, it's not about either side.
Right.
I'm just saying that, listen, if we want to put, MLK, in hell because of how he held his doctrine and how he lived, then you also need to do the same thing for other individuals that you hold in high regard. Right? Like Calvin.
Yeah.
Or like Luther.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Who committed some very, very heinous things. But yet we want to say because they were gospel, they were orthodox in their belief, they get a pass. But yet MLK doesn't. When his life represented a life of peace, when you understand what I'm saying? When he demonstrated the gospel in a way that many of these men didn't, who harbored hate in their heart. I'm not saying he's a perfect guy.
Right.
I'm just saying that let's hold equal standards.
Yes.
If you could say God is using this person, that this person is still a Christian, then you must either say that for the other person, or you throw them both down and say God used them, but they weren't saved.
Right.
Bottom line.
Bottom line.
So anyway, thank you for tuning in to the Church Dropout podcast. Please like, rate, and subscribe. Also, drop a comment below. We'd love to hear what you have to say about this podcast, and we go from there.
All right. Now, we'll also check out the podcast that we did on MLK.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's
what John MacArthur said about MLK.
Absolutely. I'll try to link it to this one so that you can just click on it and watch. Thank you so much. God bless.
Good night.